The river was loud that night. Loud enough to swallow screams. She stood on the edge, barefoot. Her mother stood behind her. One push. No hesitation. No anger. Just silence. And when the body disappeared beneath the water, she didn't scream. She turned around and walked home. This is not a story about rage. This is a story about a daughter who believed distance could replace responsibility, and thought one quiet night could erase a lifetime. She used to send money, every month, on time. Not because she missed home, she told herself it was responsibility, a duty, a clean receipt that proved she hadn't abandoned anyone. Her name was Ifeoma, 29, Nigerian, a black woman who had learned how to look forward, so hard she could pretend the past was behind her. In Lagos, her life looked like progress. A small apartment that smelled like detergent and new paint, white walls, a neat couch, a fridge that didn't rattle. A view of traffic and billboards and people who walked like they had somewhere important to be. She liked the city because it moved fast enough to drown out guilt. She worked long hours at a logistics office near the expressway. She wore pressed blouses and heels that pinched her toes. She learned the language of soon and later and I'm in a meeting until it sounded like truth. And still every month she sent the money. Not too much, not too little. Just enough to make the numbers feel moral. Enough to convince herself she was a good daughter. Back home, her mother, Mama Nika, never asked for more. Mama Nika was 61, black Nigerian, the kind of woman who could carry a basin on her head like it was part of her spine. She had raised Ifeoma with hands that were always busy, peeling yams, scrubbing floors, sewing torn hems, counting coins twice before buying gari. Her village house was older than Ifeoma's excuses. The roof had patches. The front door stuck in the rainy season. The yard grew weeds the moment you looked away. But Mama Nika kept it clean anyway, as if cleanliness could argue with poverty. When the phone rang in Lagos, Ifeoma would glance at the screen and feel the tightness arrive before the sound even finished vibrating. Home, sometimes. She answered quickly. Sometimes she didn't. The first ring, she would stare. The second ring, she would inhale. The third ring, she would whisper, "Not now." And then she would let it ring longer than she should have. Because going back meant more than buying a bus ticket. Going back meant walking into the small, hot rooms she had fought to escape. It meant stepping into a kitchen that smelled like charcoal and old memories. It meant seeing the woman who had once seemed unbreakable, now moving slower, pausing mid-step as if the floor could betray her. It meant seeing what she had left behind, an old house, an old woman, and a past she didn't want to carry. Ifeoma told herself she was busy, that the city demanded everything from her, that she couldn't lose the job, couldn't lose the rent, couldn't lose the fragile life she had built with sleepless nights and swallowed pride. But deep down, she knew the real reason. In Lagos, she could be the daughter who sent money. In the village, she would be the daughter who didn't come. And there was no transfer receipt that could hide that. When she finally picked up, her voice always turned careful soft in a way she didn't use anywhere else. "Hello, Mama." Mama Nika's voice would come through thin and warm, like a radio turned down low. "My daughter," she'd say, as if the words themselves were a hug. "I was just checking if you were well." There was never accusation, never drama, never the sharp edge people expected from mothers who had been left to age alone. Mama Nika didn't complain when the money came late, didn't count it out loud, didn't list the things she needed. She didn't even ask Ifeoma when she was coming home, because asking would mean admitting she wanted it. She knew how quickly pride can starve. So she talked about small things instead. The neighbor's goat that wandered into someone's cassava, the rain that came too early, the churchwomen gossiping like their tongues were paid by the hour. And Ifeoma would laugh at the right places and look around her clean apartment like laughter could protect her. Some nights, the call would last only 2 minutes. Other nights, Mama Nika would stay on the line a little longer, quiet in between words, as if she was listening for something in her daughter's breathing. Then she would say the same sentence every time. Simple, gentle, final, as long as I can hear your voice. I'm fine. And Ifeoma would swallow, because she understood what that sentence was really doing. It wasn't comfort. It was mercy. It was Mama Nika taking her own loneliness and folding it into something small enough to fit inside a phone call. It was the kind of love that doesn't demand, because it knows demand can push people farther away. And Ifeoma standing in her bright Lagos kitchen, holding a phone that cost more than her mother's monthly food, would nod like she agreed. She would whisper, "Yes, Mama, I'm fine too." But fine is a word poor people use when they don't want to beg. The village knew the truth before the daughter did. Villages always do. They notice the pauses before the cough. The way a woman rests her hand on the wall before taking the next step. The way her shadow seems heavier than it used to be in the afternoon sun. Mama Nika was slowing down. Not in the dramatic way people talk about illness. There was no single day where she collapsed or cried out for help. Her body simply began to take its time with everything, as if it no longer trusted the world to move at a safe speed. Her hands shook when she cooked. At first, it was small just to tremble when she held the spoon too long over the pot. Oil splashed where it shouldn't. Salt fell heavier than intended. She laughed it off, wiped her hands on her wrapper, and said age was only trying to remind her who was in charge. But the shaking stayed. Her steps grew shorter. The distance from the bedroom to the doorway became something she measured with care. She no longer lifted her feet high. She slid them, gently, like the ground might disappear if she startled it. Her gaze grew quieter. Mama Nika used to wait before the sun, humming hymns while the village still slept. Now she rose later, sat longer. Let the morning stretch around her like an old cloth she wasn't ready to fold. Every morning, after washing her face and tying her scarf, she walked to the river, slowly. The river lay just beyond the cluster of houses, past the narrow path where weeds grew back, no matter how often they were cut. The walk used to take her 10 minutes. Now it took as long as it took. She did not go there to swim. She did not go there to pray. She went there to sit. The river did not ask her to hurry. It did not expect her to explain herself. It did not look disappointed when she paused halfway down the path to catch her breath. Water moved at its own pace, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, and Mama Nika liked that it never apologized for either. She would sit on the flat stone near the bank, fold her hands in her lap, and watch the surface ripple. The sound filled the spaces where conversation used to be. In the village, people noticed. They always do. They saw her walking alone now. Saw the way she leaned more heavily on her stick. Saw how she lingered longer by the river than anyone else. They asked questions gently at first. "How is your daughter? When is she coming to see you?" Mama Nika smiled. It was a practiced smile. One she had learned over years of answering questions she didn't have the strength to fight. "She's busy building her future," she said. She said it with pride, because pride was easier than truth. People nodded. Some clicked their tongues sympathetically. Others looked away, embarrassed by the silence that followed. Everyone understood what that sentence meant, even if no one said it out loud. A future often costs someone else their present. What Mama Nika did not say was that nights were harder. That pain felt louder when no one was watching. During the day, she could manage. Neighbors passed by. Children shouted in the distance. Life made enough noise to distract her from her own body. But at night, the village quieted. The crickets took over. The wind slipped through the cracks in her walls. Her joints burned in ways that had no names. The bed felt too big for one small body, and every turn reminded her that strength, once lost, does not announce its departure. Sometimes she woke and reached for her phone before she remembered the time. Too late to call. Too early to pretend she was fine. So she would lie there, staring at the ceiling, listening to her own breathing like it belonged to someone else. On some nights, she stood at the door, barefoot, wrapped in a faded shawl. She stood there longer than she should have, staring down the dirt road that led out of the village. It was the same road her daughter had taken years ago, carrying a small bag and a heart full of promises. Mama Nika imagined headlights. She imagined the sound of an engine slowing, a car door opening, footsteps that knew exactly where to stop. She imagined Ifeoma's voice calling, "Mama." She imagined holding her daughter's face and scolding her for coming without notice. She imagined everything. The road stayed dark. No headlights broke the night. No engine hum disturbed the silence. The wind passed instead, cool and indifferent, brushing past her legs like it had places to go. After a while, Mama Nika would turn back inside, bolt the door, sit on the edge of her bed and wait for sleep to return, if it felt kind enough. In the morning, she would wake again, tie her scarf, and walk to the river. Because waiting, she had learned, was something you could survive, as long as you learned how to do it quietly. And the headlights she hoped for? They never did. She came back without warning. No phone call to announce the trip. No message asking if it was a good time. No gifts wrapped in apology or duty. Just her arrival sudden, sharp, inconvenient. The bus dropped her at the edge of the village just after noon. The sun sat heavy in the sky, pressing down on the red earth like it had something to prove. Ifeoma stepped off with a small suitcase and an even smaller patience. Her shoes collected dust immediately. She frowned as if the ground had done it on purpose. Nothing had changed. That was the problem. The house was still there, crouched low and stubborn, its paint peeling like it was tired of pretending. The roof sagged slightly in the middle. The windows were smaller than she remembered, or maybe she had grown used to larger ones. The house smelled old, not dirty, just lived in. Palm oil, wood smoke, time. The walls felt small. They closed in on her the moment she stepped inside, as if the years she had spent away had shrunk the space in retaliation. The ceiling seemed lower, the rooms tighter. She could hear every sound her body made, the drag of her suitcase, the shift of her weight, her own breathing. Mama Nika saw her from the doorway. For a moment, she didn't move. Her eyes widened first, then softened, as if they were trying to catch up with the truth standing in front of her. "My daughter," she said. Her voice broke on the second word. She crossed the room faster than her body liked and pulled Ifeoma into her arms. The hug was tight but careful, the kind given by someone who knew pain too well to be careless with it. Mama Nika cried. Not loud cries. Not the kind meant to be heard by neighbors. These were relieved cries, quiet ones. The kind that slipped out before pride could stop them. Ifeoma stood stiff at first, then allowed the embrace. She patted her mother's back once, awkwardly, like someone comforting a stranger. She told herself she hadn't come back for this. But relief doesn't erase resentment. That night, the house held both of them like it didn't know what to do. They ate together, sitting across from each other at the small table. The food tasted the same as it always had, and that irritated Ifeoma more than she expected. She wanted evidence that time had passed, proof that her leaving had meant something. Instead, it felt like the village had paused and waited for her to return before continuing. The argument started softly, it always does. Ifeoma mentioned the money, how much she had sent, how often, how expensive life in Lagos was, how she couldn't just drop everything whenever she felt guilty. Mama Nika listened, nodded, didn't interrupt. Then she spoke, about how prices had risen, about how her legs hurt more these days, about how neighbors helped when they could, but neighbors had their own lives. Responsibility hung between them like smoke. Then came the question Ifeoma had been holding all day. "So how long are you staying?" Mama Nika asked, her voice careful. The room went quiet. Ifeoma bristled. "I just got here." "I know," her mother said quickly. "I was only asking." But the question had already landed. It felt like a trap, like expectation, like roots reaching for her ankles. They went to bed without resolving anything. Sleep came late. The next morning, Mama Nika suggested they walk to the river. It sounded harmless enough. The sun was gentler early in the day, and the path was familiar. Ifeoma agreed, mostly because saying no would have required explanation. They walked side by side, at first. Then Mama Nika's steps slowed, her breath shortened. Her hand hovered near Ifeoma's arm before finally resting there, light but insistent. Ifeoma felt the weight immediately. It annoyed her more than it should have. They moved at her mother's pace now, not hers. Each step measured, each pause longer than the last. The path that once took minutes stretched into something heavier, something demanding. The river appeared ahead, wide and patient. Mama Nika smiled when she saw it, the way people smile at something that has never disappointed them. They reached the flat stone near the bank and stopped. Mama Nika leaned more fully on Ifeoma's arm now. Her grip tightened, just a little. She moved too slowly. And that's when the thought came, not as a scream, not as a command, but as something clear, cold, perfectly calm. If she's gone, I can finally be free. The words settled in Ifeoma's mind without resistance. Free from the calls. Free from the waiting. Free from the small house in the small village and the life that refused to let her go. She stared at the river. It moved without asking permission. And for the first time, the future felt close enough to touch. There was no fight. No shouting. No raised voices tearing through the air. No dramatic moment anyone could later point to and say, that was when everything broke. It happened quietly. So quietly that, if someone had been standing far enough away, they might have mistaken it for nothing at all. The river was wide that morning, swollen from recent rains. Its surface looked calm, almost polite, but underneath it pulled with the kind of strength that doesn't announce itself. The water moved steadily, confident in where it was going. Mama Nika stood near the edge, her feet planted carefully on the damp ground. She leaned slightly forward, peering at the current as if it were an old friend she trusted more than her own balance. Ifeoma stood just behind her, close enough to feel her mother's back rise and fall with each breath, close enough to smell the faint soap on her wrapper, close enough to reach out either way. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then Mama Nika's foot slid, not a dramatic fall, just a small misstep, the kind anyone could make. Her body tilted forward. Instinct took over before thought could catch up. Her hand shot out, fingers spread wide, searching for something solid. She reached for the air. Her nails cut through it, grasping at emptiness. Her other foot tried to follow, but the ground betrayed her, slick and unforgiving. And then she felt hands on her back. Strong hands, steady hands. Hands she had once held when they were small and sticky and afraid of the dark. Hands she had guided across busy roads, across schoolyards, across life. Familiar hands. For half a second, Mama Nika thought it was help. Her body leaned into the touch, trusting it the way a body does when it has no reason not to. Then the pressure changed. Not a shove born of anger, not a violent thrust, just enough. Enough to remove balance. Enough to make falling inevitable. The river did not hesitate. The moment Mama Nika's body broke the surface, the water took her without argument. It wrapped around her legs, pulled at her clothes, dragged her weight forward as if it had been waiting its turn. Her head went under once, came back up. Her mouth opened, but the sound never made it out the way she expected. The river swallowed it, thick and loud and final. She flailed, arms cutting at the water, movements frantic but weak. Age had stolen the strength she might have needed in that moment. The current pulled harder, faster, uncaring. On the bank, Ifeoma stood still. She watched. Seconds passed. 1, 2, 3. Time stretched strangely, each moment heavy and precise. Long enough to change her mind, long enough to step forward, long enough to call out. She did none of it. Her mother's eyes broke the surface one last time. They searched not wildly, not accusingly, but with confusion, as if she were trying to understand why the help she had felt had disappeared. Then the river closed over her head. The water smoothed itself out again, ripples spreading and fading like the memory of a stone tossed and forgotten. Afiama stayed where she was. She didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't fall to her knees. She stood there long enough to be sure. Long enough to know there would be no sudden resurfacing. No last breath. No miracle dragged back from the depths. When the river gave her nothing back, she exhaled. Slowly, she looked down at her hands. They were steady. She wiped them on her dress, once on each side, brushing away dirt that wasn't really there. She straightened the fabric at her waist, smoothed the creases, and turned away from the water. The path back to the village waited, narrow and familiar. She stepped onto it without looking back, and walked away. She told people her mother slipped. She said it calmly, simply, as if repeating something that had already happened 100 times in her head. The river was wet. The ground was uneven, she explained. She lost her footing. The river is dangerous after all. Everyone in the village knew that. They had grown up with its moods. They had seen it take goats, tools, sometimes even men who believed strength was enough. An old woman falling into it was not a mystery. It was a misfortune. Tragic but believable. No one questioned it. They shook their heads, clicked their tongues, spoke softly about fate and God's timing. Someone mentioned how Mama Nika had been slowing down lately. Another said she always worried about that river. The story settled easily into place, like soil over a grave. Afiama handled everything quickly. There were papers to sign, neighbors to thank, rituals to complete. She moved through them all with efficiency, as if keeping busy could keep something else from catching up to her. The house was sold. Not immediately, but soon enough. Too many memories clung to the walls. Too many quiet corners that seemed to watch her when she passed. The money from the sale felt lighter than it should have, but she told herself that was just grief doing strange things to numbers. She packed what mattered, left the rest behind. Then she returned to Lagos. Her life moved forward. That's what people said. That's what she repeated when asked how she was coping. Work filled her days again. Emails, deadlines, meetings that stretched until the sun sank behind glass buildings. She rented a slightly larger apartment, bought new furniture, changed her routine. From the outside, it looked like resilience. But silence has weight. At night, when the city quieted just enough for her thoughts to surface, she heard water. Not loudly, softly. In the shower, when it ran too long and the steam closed in around her. The sound would shift, deepen, and suddenly she was standing by the river again, watching ripples smooth themselves out. In the sink, when she washed her hands. The way the water curled around her fingers made her chest tighten. She scrubbed harder than necessary, as if something invisible clung to her skin, in her dreams. Those were the worst. The river always appeared calm there, deceptively gentle. She stood on the bank, calling out, but her voice never reached the water. Sometimes she was the one in the river, sinking slowly, watching the surface move farther away. Other times, she stood frozen, unable to move her legs, unable to turn her head. She woke with her heart racing, sheets damp with sweat, the echo of rushing water still ringing in her ears. During the day, she avoided mirrors. At first, she didn't notice she was doing it. She brushed her teeth without looking up, past reflective windows without glancing sideways, adjusted her clothes by feel alone. Then one morning, half asleep, she caught her reflection by accident. For a split second, it wasn't just her staring back. The bathroom light flickered. The mirror clouded slightly with steam. And there, just behind her shoulder, stood a shape she knew too well. An older woman, dark-skinned, wrapped in a faded cloth. Her face thin, eyes wide with something between confusion and trust. Mama Nika. Her arms were extended forward. Not accusing, not angry, still reaching. Afiama spun around, heart pounding, but the room was empty. The mirror showed only her own reflection, now wide-eyed, shaking, alone. She pressed her palms against the sink until the trembling eased. After that, She was careful. She kept lights on at night, slept with the television murmuring softly, just loud enough to drown out the sound of water in her head. She told herself grief did strange things to people, that time would smooth it all out. But sometimes, when the apartment was quiet and she moved too slowly past a reflective surface, she still felt it, that presence, that unfinished motion. Her mother, standing just behind her, still reaching. Years later, she stood by another river. This one ran through the city wide, controlled, bordered by concrete and railings meant to keep people safe from themselves. Cars passed nearby. Streetlights flickered on as evening settled in. It was a civilized river, a river that pretended it could not hurt anyone. But it sounded the same low rush, the same steady pull, the same endless movement toward somewhere she could not see. Ifeoma was older now. Her face carried lines she hadn't noticed forming. Her hair was tied back neatly, streaked with gray she hadn't bothered to hide. She wore a coat against the evening chill, her hands tucked deep into the pockets as if they might disappear otherwise. She had built the life she wanted. A better job, a quieter apartment, a routine that didn't ask questions. From the outside, she looked like a woman who had survived. She leaned against the railing and listened to the water move beneath her, and for the first time in years, she cried. Not the restrained tears she had mastered in private. Not the silent kind she wiped away quickly. These came heavy, shuddering, uncontrolled. They surprised her. She wasn't thinking about her mother's smile, or her voice on the phone, or the house by the village road. She wasn't missing her. What broke her open was something else entirely. A thought that arrived fully formed, without mercy. No one had ever pushed her mother, except herself. Not fate, not the river. Not age or weakness or bad luck. Her. She gripped the railing harder as the truth settled into her bones. All the years she had spent rearranging the story, softening it, burying it under busyness and distance, collapsed under the weight of that single realization. She had not been trapped. She had not been forced. She had not been helpless. She had chosen. The river below continued on, indifferent to her confession. It had carried many things away in its time. Regret was not new to it. Ifeoma pressed her forehead against the cool metal and closed her eyes. She thought of all the apologies she had practiced in her head over the years. The ones she imagined saying aloud if somehow impossibly her mother were standing beside her now. I was tired. I was afraid. I didn't know what to do. They sounded small now, thin, useless. Some truths arrive too late to be forgiven. Some realizations come only after there is no one left to hear them. She straightened slowly, wiping her face with the sleeve of her coat. The city moved on around her. People passed without looking. Life continued as it always does. The river kept flowing. And Ifeoma understood finally what she had been running from all along. There are some truths no apology can undo. Some people think distance can replace love. They believe that sending money, making promises, and staying away long enough will soften the weight of absence. That miles can do the work the heart refuses to do. For many, distance feels safer than facing what love demands: time, patience, and the courage to stay. Others believe silence is harmless. They tell themselves that saying nothing avoids conflict, that quiet choices leave no scars, that if no words are spoken and no scenes are made, no damage is done. In families like theirs, Black, Nigerian, bound by duty and unspoken rules, silence is often mistaken for respect. But silence doesn't forgive. It remembers every moment help was withheld. Every time love stood close enough to act and chose not to. Silence becomes a witness that never forgets what it saw. And rivers never forget. They carry what is given to them: truth, regret, and the weight of unfinished love moving forward without judgment, without pause, long after the voices that failed have gone quiet.